I never saw it coming. My wife, Emily, betrayed me, claiming our daughter, Sophie, backed her decision to end our marriage. Sophie had no clue what was about to unfold. I can still picture the moment the envelope arrived at my doorstep. The delivery guy, a young kid with a blank face, handed it over without a word, oblivious to the fact that he'd just dropped a bomb on my life. It was just a plain white envelope, no different from the countless others I'd received over the years. But this one carried a weight far heavier than paper. It held the end of everything I'd known. I turned it over, my name, James Harper, printed in stark, emotionless black ink. No sender's name, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who it was from. Emily Harper, my wife of 3 decades. My hands were steady as I tore it open, but my heart was racing. Part of me already sensed what was inside, yet a stubborn flicker of hope clung to the idea that she'd at least have the decency to talk to me first. I unfolded the crisp pages and read the words that shattered my world. Divorce petition. The letters swam for a moment before snapping into brutal clarity. I skipped the legal jargon, my eyes locking onto her demands, alimony, and a hefty sum at that. My breath stayed even, but inside, a storm was brewing. Alimony? After all I'd given, after years of pouring my soul into this family, the sheer audacity of it almost made me laugh. Then came the gut punch. Sophie's name, listed as supporting the divorce. I raked a hand through my hair, forcing air into my lungs. I'd always known Emily's sway over Sophie was strong, but to see my own daughter align with her mother without so much as a conversation, that cut deeper than anything. Before I could stop myself, I grabbed my phone and dialed Emily. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Oh, James," she said, her voice smooth, almost rehearsed, like she'd been waiting for me. "You didn't waste any time, did you?" My tone was calm, but there was an edge I couldn't hide. A pause, then a soft exhale. Why would I? This was inevitable. I swallowed the bitterness clawing up my throat. "You didn't think we should talk first?" She let out a small, amused chuckle. "What's there to talk about, James? You're always gone. Flights, meetings, deals. It's time I put my happiness first." My grip on the phone tightened. Happiness? And what about Sophie? "Don't drag Sophie into this," she snapped, her voice sharp with something real for the first time. "She agrees with me. She sees it too. You were never there." My jaw clenched. "So you turned her against me." Emily sighed, exasperated. "She's an adult, James. She chose for herself." I closed my eyes, the sting of betrayal pulsing through me. Sophie had once been my little girl, the one who'd leap into my arms after every trip. Now she stood on the other side, seeing me as a stranger. Emily's tone softened, but I could hear the smugness beneath it. "This is better for us, James. For me and Sophie." Us. Not me, not her, just them, as if I'd never been part of their world. I stared at the papers on the table, the ink cold and final. "You'll get what you deserve," I said quietly. A pause, then a hum of approval. "Good. Let's keep this civil." I didn't reply. My mind had already shifted gears, the same ones I used in high-stakes deals. Emotion off, strategy on. Emily thought she'd won. She thought I'd sign. She'd hand over everything without a fight. But she didn't know me as well as she thought. I hung up and set the phone down. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of relief. The game had just begun. 30 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting in a foreign city, staring at divorce papers from the woman I'd loved, I'd have laughed. Back then, I was young, driven, and naive, too focused on my career to see the choices I was making. But now, it's all clear. Emily wasn't always this way. Or maybe she was, and I was too blind to notice. We met at Brooks and Turner, a trading firm where I was a hungry young salesman determined to climb the ladder. She was the receptionist, magnetic and charming, the kind of woman who lit up a room. I was different from the other guys chasing her. Fresh out of college, I had no time for games, no interest in romance. But Emily had other plans. It started small, a lingering glance, a playful smile. A note slipped with my coffee, scribbled with compliments about my work ethic. She knew exactly what she was doing, and I, clueless about office dynamics, thought it was harmless. Then one day, she handed me a hairpin, casual as anything. I turned it over, puzzled, until I saw her phone number etched on the back. Most guys would have been thrilled. Me, I ignored it. I was too busy proving myself. But Emily wasn't one to be brushed off. One evening, she cornered me outside the office. "Why didn't you call?" she asked, arms crossed, her face unreadable. I fumbled, caught off guard. "I've been busy." She smirked, shaking her head. "Too busy for a hello? Too busy for dinner?" Looking back, I should have seen the red flags, her calculated persistence, her refusal to take no for an answer. But I was young and inexperienced, so I said yes. That first dinner led to more, and soon we were a couple. At first, it felt right. She admired my ambition, talked about our future with excitement, always pushing me to dream bigger. "You'll be running this place one day," she'd say, eyes gleaming, "and I'll be right there with you." I believed her. 3 years later, I proposed. "I'll be by your side forever," she promised, gripping my hand with such conviction that I never doubted her. If only I'd known. Marriage was a slow unraveling. At first, things were good. After we tied the knot, Emily quit her job, saying she wanted to focus on our home. "Why work when I can build our life together?" she said with a smile. It made sense. I was earning enough for both of us. I wanted to provide. Then Sophie came along. The pregnancy was tough. Emily was sick constantly, too drained to do much. I stepped up, cooking, cleaning, making sure she was comfortable. It was my job as a husband, I told myself. Things would improve after Sophie was born. They didn't. Emily's exhaustion morphed into chronic discontent. She resented my long hours, but snapped when I stayed home to help. "You're never here," she'd complain one day, then the next. "You're underfoot." There was no winning. The warm, supportive woman I'd married faded, replaced by someone who looked at me like I was just another fixture in the house, useful but not valued. I chalked it up to stress. New parents struggled, right? But as the years passed, I saw the truth. Emily didn't care anymore. Sophie was different. As a kid, she worshipped me. I was her hero, her safe place. I'd come home from a grueling trip, and she'd race to the door, arms wide, begging to be scooped up. Those moments made every sacrifice worth it. But as she grew, things shifted. She started mirroring Emily, her attitudes, her mannerisms, her sense of entitlement. I'd hear them whispering, laughing, only to fall silent when I walked in. When I tried talking to Sophie, I got indifference at best, irritation at worst. "Dad, not now," she'd say, brushing past me. I told myself it was normal. Teenagers needed space. But then the comments started. "You're always working, Dad. You don't even know what's going on in my life. Mom's right. You're never here." I didn't get it. I'd given them everything. The house, private schools, vacations, the designer clothes Emily insisted Sophie needed. None of it mattered. To them, I was just a paycheck. The final years of our marriage were a slow bleed. Emily and I hadn't shared a bedroom in nearly 2 decades. The closeness we'd once had was a distant memory, something from another life. I told myself I stayed for Sophie, but really, I was avoiding the inevitable. I thought about divorce, imagined starting over with someone who saw me as more than a bank account. But every time, I thought of Sophie. She wasn't my little girl anymore, but she was still my daughter. So I stayed. I worked. I sacrificed. And in return, Emily served me divorce papers without a word, and Sophie sided with her. All those years, all that effort, gone. But as I stared at those papers, something shifted. Maybe this was my chance. Maybe this was my freedom. Emily thought she'd won. She didn't realize I'd spent decades mastering high-stakes deals, reading people, playing the game better than anyone. Now it was my turn. She wanted everything? Fine. She just didn't know what everything really meant. They say family is your rock, the one constant you can count on no matter what. But what happens when you realize the people you gave everything for never saw you as family? That truth didn't hit me all at once. It came in fragments, each one sharper than the last, cutting deeper the more I tried to ignore them. I still remember Sophie as a little girl, running to me after my trips, her tiny arms around my legs, giggling about how much she missed me. Those were the moments that kept me going, no matter how drained I was from work. But somewhere along the way, that girl vanished. It started small. Sophie stopped waiting by the door. Then she stopped asking for bedtime stories. By her teens, she barely looked up from her phone when I walked in. Emily brushed it off. "Teenagers are like that," she'd say, rolling her eyes like I was overreacting. So I gave Sophie space, tried not to take it personally. But then I noticed the conversations. I'd walk into a room, and their chatter would stop. I'd catch the end of a laugh, a shared joke, then silence. They weren't subtle about it. Emily would smirk, Sophie would shrug, and I'd tell myself I was imagining things. I wasn't. The first time I overheard what they really thought of me, I brushed it off. It was late, and I was packing for a trip, heading to the kitchen for coffee, when I heard them in the living room. "He's making such a big deal out of packing," Emily muttered, her tone laced with amusement. Sophie snorted. "At least it keeps him out of our way." My hand tightened around the mug. I cleared my throat, stepping into the room. Sophie looked up, feigning innocence. "Oh, Dad, you all set?" Emily didn't even glance at me, just kept watching TV, arms crossed. I forced a smile. "Yeah, early flight tomorrow." I wanted to ask why they resented me, why I felt like an outsider in my own home, but I knew I'd get nothing. So I went back to my room, alone, as I had been for years. Emily and I hadn't shared a bed in decades. It started with her saying she needed space one night. Space became separate beds, then separate rooms. Before I knew it, we were strangers sharing a last name. I thought it was temporary, that she'd come back to me. She never did. I should have left then, walked away when I saw our marriage was hollow. But I stayed, for Sophie, for the family I thought I had. Sophie's true colors weren't just in her distance, it was how easily she dismissed me. By college, our talks were purely transactional. "Dad, I need money for books." "Dad, can you send cash for rent?" "Dad, my friends and I are going on a trip. Can you help?" Not once did she ask how I was. I was her ATM, nothing more. Emily encouraged it. "She's young, James. Let her live a little." So I did. I paid for everything. But what hurt most was overhearing her with her friends one night. I'd just gotten home, exhausted, tie loose, briefcase in hand. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard her laughter from the kitchen, light and carefree. "My dad's so boring," she said, always droning on about responsibility and hard work. "He's so old school." Her friends giggled. "Yeah, but at least he's loaded," one said. "That's gotta count for something." Sophie didn't miss a beat. I mean, yeah, he's useful. Useful. Not loved, not respected, just useful. I stood there, frozen, hearing my daughter reduce me to a convenience. For the first time, I asked myself, what if she never saw me as her father? The day those divorce papers arrived, it wasn't just Emily's betrayal that broke me, it was Sophie's. Her signature was there, cold and formal, right below her mother's. She'd chosen her side without a word to me. I called Emily, my voice tight but controlled. You didn't even let me talk to Sophie. She laughed. She doesn't need to talk to you, James. She sees it. You were never here. My jaw tightened. I worked to give you both everything. And now you'll give me what I deserve, she said, like I was nothing. In the background, I heard Sophie's voice, faint but clear. That's right, Dad. Take responsibility. Responsibility? For what? For giving them a life of luxury? For ensuring they never wanted for anything? For being the one they could always rely on, only to be discarded when I wasn't useful anymore? Something in me shifted. They thought I'd crumble under their betrayal. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I exhaled, staring at the papers one last time. Fine, I said. Emily hummed, pleased. Good. Let's not drag this out. I didn't argue. I'd already decided. I'd give them everything. But they didn't know what everything really meant. Some truths creep into your life slowly, like cracks in a dam. Others hit like a tidal wave, leaving you gasping, forcing you to see the people you loved for who they really are. My truth was the latter. For years, I'd ignored the signs. Emily's coldness, Sophie's distance. I told myself it was marriage fatigue, teenage rebellion, normal family struggles. I made excuses, convinced myself we'd get through it. But deep down, I knew. I just wasn't ready to face it until I had no choice. It happened in Singapore. I was set to meet a client for dinner, a last-minute plan after my meetings wrapped early. The restaurant was upscale, all hushed voices and polished waiters. My client called, running late. No problem, I said, settling in with a coffee. I was skimming emails when a familiar voice stopped me cold. Across the restaurant, partially hidden by a pillar, was Emily. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years, relaxed, radiant, alive. Across from her sat Richard, my old boss. I froze. Richard had been a senior exec at Brooks & Turner before retiring. He'd introduced me to Emily, even toasted us at our wedding, calling us the perfect pair. But this wasn't two old friends catching up. There was a closeness between them, the way he leaned in, the way her fingers brushed his wrist as she laughed. It was the kind of touch that spoke of intimacy, of shared secrets. I should have walked away, spared myself the pain of what I was about to hear. But I stayed, hidden by the pillar, and listened. The betrayal unfolded in fragments. Sophie's obsessed with K-pop stars now, Richard said, chuckling. She's begging to go to Seoul for a concert. I didn't register the name at first until Emily replied, stirring her wine. She gets it from you. Expensive tastes. My blood ran cold. Richard grinned. I just want her to have the best. Emily sighed. She knows who you are, you know. She's proud of it. My coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. Sophie. They were talking about Sophie. Richard wasn't just a friend. He was her father. And Emily had known all along. The weight of the lie crushed me. The room faded. The clinking glasses, the soft music, all gone. I'd spent 30 years raising another man's child, believing she was mine, sacrificing everything for a family that was never real. And they'd laughed about it. He has no clue, does he? Richard asked, amused. None, Emily said, smiling. He's always been too busy working. He never questioned it. I gritted my teeth. There was a moment after he proposed when I thought I might get caught, she went on, swirling her wine. But I played it safe, and once Sophie was born, it was easy. Richard chuckled. Well, it worked out. He raised her well. Emily clinked her glass against his. And now he'll keep taking care of us both for life. I don't know how I left that restaurant. One minute, I was clutching my coffee. The next, I was outside, the humid Singapore air pressing against me, my heart pounding so hard I thought it'd stop. I wandered for hours, lost in rage and humiliation. Every memory, Sophie's first steps, her school plays, her graduation, was a lie. She wasn't mine. I'd never been their husband, their father, just their provider. I thought of every time I'd been mocked, dismissed, treated like an intruder in my own home. The next time I saw Sophie, she was sprawled on the couch, makeup smudged from a night out. I stood there, staring at the daughter I'd loved more than anything. I needed proof. A few strands of hair, a glass from the sink. It wasn't hard. The DNA test came back a week later, 0% probability of paternity. I sat at my desk, hands shaking, staring at the results. I'd known, but seeing it in black and white broke something in me. I wasn't their fool anymore. I wasn't going to give Emily another dime. Most men would have lost it, confronted their wife, screamed at their kid, demanded answers. But I wasn't most men. I'd spent my career mastering high-stakes negotiations, strategizing, always coming out on top. Now I had one final deal to close. I sat back, breathing deeply. Emily wanted a divorce? Fine. Sophie wanted to side with her? Fine. They thought they'd take everything from me. They had no idea what was coming. I let them think they'd won. I signed the papers, played the broken husband. But while they celebrated, I was plotting their downfall. They'd spent decades lying, using me, treating me like a fool. Now it was my turn. Revenge is best served cold, and after 30 years of being played, I'd learned patience was my greatest weapon. I didn't lash out, didn't confront Emily in some dramatic showdown. That's what she wanted, to see me desperate, begging. So I gave her nothing. I signed the papers without a word, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She thought she'd won. She had no idea I'd already moved my pieces into place. When I got back from Singapore, a strange calm settled over me. The house felt different, lighter, like a weight had lifted. Maybe it was the truth setting me free. For years, I'd tiptoed around my own home, every conversation with Emily a potential minefield, every moment with Sophie laced with tension. Now, I was done. But freedom wasn't enough. I needed them to feel what I'd felt. Emily thought she was walking away with everything, the house, the money, the status. She was wrong. My first move wasn't to a lawyer or a friend. It was to a financial investigator. I wanted every detail of my assets, every joint account, every investment tied to Emily. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. She'd been draining me for years, luxury shopping sprees, secret accounts, trips I never knew about. Sophie was just as guilty, racking up thousands on my credit cards for designer clothes, fancy restaurants, and lavish vacations while I worked late, missing holidays and birthdays. They spent like money grew on trees. It was time to rewrite the rules. Emily wanted everything. I'd give her everything, everything worthless. Within a week, I'd moved all the valuable assets out of my name. The penthouse, transferred. The stocks, liquidated. The business investments, cashed out. The house, it was never mine to begin with. The day the divorce was finalized, Emily strutted into the lawyer's office like she'd hit the jackpot. "Everything's in order," she said, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "Let's handle this like adults." I nodded, my face blank. She expected me to fight, to cling to the house, the money, the investments. Instead, I leaned back and let her think she'd won. She left that office believing she'd secured the easiest settlement in history. It didn't take long for reality to sink in. A few days later, my phone rang. I ignored it. Then again and again. Finally, a voicemail. "James, we need to talk. There's been a mistake." I smirked. "A mistake?" "No, Emily. The mistake was underestimating me." I let her stew before picking up. "What's the problem?" I asked, casual as ever. "What's the problem?" she snapped. "The accounts are empty, James. The investments? Gone. The penthouse? Where's the deed?" I let out a small laugh. "Oh, that? It was never mine. I was just leasing it from my friend Tom." Silence. Then her voice dropped to a hiss. "You tricked me." "No," I said coolly. "You tricked yourself." Sophie called next, her voice soft, panicked. "Dad, Mom's losing it. She says there's no money." "That's right," I said simply. She laughed nervously. "Come on, Dad. Stop messing around. You've got money, right?" I sipped my coffee. "You tell me, Sophie. Where do you think my money went? Your handbags? Your trips? The car your mom bought with my card?" She stammered. "I didn't think—" "No, you didn't," I cut in. "Neither did your mother. Now you both get to deal with it." The silence on the other end was almost sweet. For years they'd mocked me, used me, laughed behind my back. Now they were the ones scrambling. But I wasn't done. Richard, the man who'd sat across from my wife, gloating about fooling me, was next. I'd been digging for months. Every shady deal, every hidden transaction, every skeleton in his closet. When the time was right, I sent it all to his ex-wife. She had no idea he'd fathered a secret child, funneled money to Emily for years. When she found out, she took everything: his house, his savings, his retirement. He was left with nothing, begging for scraps. The man who thought he was untouchable was ruined. When Emily called again, her tone had shifted. No more smugness, just desperation. "James," she said softly, "we need to talk." I leaned back in my chair. "Do we?" She hesitated. "I made mistakes, but you don't have to do this. You don't have to leave us with nothing." I smiled at her nerve. "Emily, you left me a long time ago." She went quiet, then started crying. The first time in decades I'd heard her break. I let her feel it, every ounce of the betrayal I'd carried. Then, just as she'd done to me countless times, I hung up. Checkmate. Emily thought she'd taken everything, but in the end, she was the one left with nothing. There's a silence that comes when someone realizes they've lost it all. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but a heavy, choking stillness. I'd spent 30 years building a life for Emily and Sophie, giving everything to a family that was never mine. Now, they were facing the fallout. Emily had walked into that divorce brimming with confidence, bragging about her victory, expecting me to collapse under her demands. She thought she'd won, until she realized she had nothing. It took 3 days for her to call again. I let her calls go unanswered, let her grapple with the panic, the dawning horror. Late one night, my phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen, and I answered, voice light. "Emily?" Her tone was tight, barely holding it together. "What did you do?" I sipped my drink, leaning back. "What do you mean?" "The accounts, James," she snapped. "They're empty. Where's the money?" I laughed. She was finally catching up. "That was my money, Emily. And last I checked, I don't owe you a thing." She sucked in a breath. "You can't—" "I can. And I did." Her laugh was harsh, but I heard the fear creeping in. I have nothing, James. Nothing. You said you wanted everything, I said. And you got it, every worthless asset in my name. Silence. She knew. I'd given her a crumbling property, drained accounts, and furniture from a penthouse she no longer had. I heard her sharp inhale. We still have the house, she said, almost pleading. I almost felt bad. Almost. You mean the house you and Sophie fought so hard for? I asked. The one I didn't contest? She hesitated. Yes. I chuckled. Emily, darling, that house was never mine. Dead silence. I let it sink in. What? She whispered. You heard me. You're lying. Am I? She'd been so focused on beating me, so sure she was smarter, she never checked who owned the house. It was never mine, so it was never hers. Sophie's call came next. I'd been waiting. Dad, she started, trying to sound calm, but her voice shook. Mom says there's a problem with the house. I stared at the ceiling. No problem. It's just not yours. A pause. What do you mean? It was never mine, Sophie. It belonged to Tom. I was renting it. Her breath caught. But you promised. I never promised you anything. Silence. Dad, please. We don't have anywhere to go. For years, I'd been her wallet, nothing more. She'd mocked me, sided with Emily, treated me like garbage. Now she needed me, and I didn't care. Richard's fall was the final piece. I almost didn't answer his call, but curiosity won. James, he said, his voice raw. Carter. You didn't have to do this. I smirked. Didn't I? His breath shook. You ruined me. No, Richard. You ruined yourself. Shouldn't have told her. His voice cracked. You told my wife? Of course. With all the proof she needed to take everything. He laughed bitterly. Think you won? I didn't hesitate. I know I did. In the end, Emily and Sophie had nowhere to turn. The house was gone. The accounts empty. Their support system vanished. Richard was destroyed. I'd given them what they wanted, everything, and in doing so, took away what they needed. And me? I walked away free. For the first time in 30 years, I owed no one. I wasn't a husband, wasn't a father to a daughter who never saw me as one. I was just James Harper, and I'd never felt lighter. Emily thought she'd set me up to fail, but she'd set herself up for ruin, and I'd let her walk right into it. Betrayal is a strange beast. At first, it crushes you, leaves you reeling, questioning everything. But step back, and you see it says more about the betrayers than it ever did about you. Emily and Sophie thought they'd outsmarted me, secured their cushy future while I was left to rot. But betrayal has a way of boomeranging, hitting the ones who dealt it hardest. After realizing they had no money, no home, no safety net, their panic set in. I saw Emily again at the lawyer's office, finalizing paperwork. She looked different, her polished glow gone, replaced by tired eyes and the weight of reality. She felt me watching and turned, our eyes locking. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stood, approaching me. James, she said, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. I raised an eyebrow. Emily, she hesitated. Can we talk? I tilted my head. Talk? We had 30 years, Emily. You seemed fine deciding without me before. She flinched but held her ground. I know I screwed up, but we don't have to hate each other. I chuckled. You don't get to rewrite history now that it's not going your way. She shifted, uneasy. It's not just me. It's Sophie. She's struggling. There it was. She wasn't here for herself. Not entirely. She was here because she had nothing left. I crossed my arms, face blank. Sophie made her choice. She's still your daughter, James. I raised an eyebrow. Is she? Her breath hitched. She knew what I meant, but I wasn't playing her game. Good luck, Emily, I said, turning to leave. She grabbed my arm. Wait. I stared at her hand until she let go, then walked away. I had nothing left to say. Sophie called a week later, her voice shaky. Dad, she said. I stayed silent. I know I haven't been great to you, she admitted. I almost laughed. Understatement of the century. She exhaled. I don't know what to do. Mom's a mess, Richard's gone, and She trailed off. I need help. There it was. After years of treating me like a cash machine, she needed me. I didn't bite. Why now, Sophie? She went quiet. I thought you'd always be there. I closed my eyes. And when I was there, what did you do? Laughed at me, used me, mocked me. Now, because life didn't pan out, I'm worth talking to? I heard her choke back tears. I was stupid. Yes, you were. She sniffled. We don't have anywhere to go, Dad. For a split second, I pictured the little girl who'd run to me, the daughter I'd adored. But she'd never been mine, and even if she had, she'd shown me what she thought of me when she chose Emily. I hope you figure it out, I said, and hung up. Richard was a broken man when I saw him next. The smug bastard who'd carried himself like he owned the world was gone. His ex-wife had taken him to court and won. Every asset, every cent, gone. His career was over, his name trashed. I spotted him at a cafe one morning. He looked up, our eyes meeting, and for the first time, I saw defeat in him. He swallowed hard. James. I smirked. Richard. He rubbed his face, exhausted. I lost everything. I sipped my coffee. I know. His eyes flashed. Regret, maybe anger. Was it worth it? I tilted my head. You tell me. Was 30 years of lies worth it? He had no answer. A month later, Emily called one last time. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. James, she breathed. I said nothing. I'm sorry, she said, and I could tell she meant it. I chuckled dryly. For what? Everything. But apologies don't undo 30 years. I exhaled. Emily, we're done. We'll never be what we were. She went quiet. Take care, I said, and hung up, feeling nothing. No anger, no sadness, just peace. Freedom. For the first time in 3 decades, I was free. No more eggshells, no more playing the fool, no more giving to people who never cared. I'd lost what I thought mattered and gained myself. Emily, Sophie, Richard, they'd all betrayed me, but now they were picking up the pieces. And me? I was alive. Betrayal destroys, leaving ruins in its wake, stripping away illusions until only raw truth remains. That truth was simple. I'd been blind for 30 years. Not anymore. Emily and Sophie were out of my life, left to fend for themselves. Richard was gone, his empire crumbled. The people who'd built their lives on lies were drowning in them. And me? I was free. It didn't take long for their world to collapse. With no home, no money, no support, Emily and Sophie faced hard choices. They tried crashing with friends, but people vanish when you've got nothing to offer. Emily reached out to her sisters, the ones she'd bragged to about her perfect life with a successful husband. They turned her away. Sophie, once too good for boring jobs, was forced to work at a cafe, serving people who used to envy her lavish lifestyle. Richard vanished. His health failing, his reputation shot, no one left to turn to. They'd expected to coast on my dime forever. Instead, they were fighting to survive. And the best part? I didn't lift a finger. They'd done it to themselves. While they scrambled, I was already moving forward. After the divorce, my old friend Tom offered me a job with his growing business in Singapore. I'd spent decades tied down, sacrificing my dreams for a family that didn't deserve me. Now, I had no reason to stay. I sold what little I still owned, packed my bags, and left. The moment my plane landed, I felt it. Peace. No more cold, silent dinners. No more fake smiles. No more being used. I was done living for others. I was living for me. 6 months later, my phone rang as I sat on a balcony overlooking Singapore's skyline, drink in hand, more at ease than I'd ever been. Sophie's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring, then picked up. Sophie. A long silence, then a shaky breath. Dad. Her voice wasn't demanding or mocking, just lost. I said nothing. I got a job, she said. At a cafe, minimum wage. Mom and I are struggling. I let that hang. Are you happy? I asked. She laughed bitterly. No. I nodded. Maybe you should have thought about that before you threw me away. Her voice cracked. I know. I sighed, staring at the city. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't a fool. You made your choice, Sophie. A pause, then a whisper. I regret it. It was the first time she'd admitted it. It should have felt like a win, but I just felt tired. I'd spent too long caring for people who didn't care back. I hope you figure things out, I said, and hung up. A few weeks later, Emily called. James, she said, her voice soft. I stayed silent. I made mistakes, she admitted. I was selfish, and I lost everything. For the first time in 30 years, she sounded genuinely sorry. But regret doesn't erase betrayal. I closed my eyes. Emily, I don't hate you. A pause. You don't? No, I said. But I don't forgive you either. Silence. We can fix this, she whispered. We can start over. I chuckled. We're not enemies, Emily. We're nothing. She exhaled shakily. You won't give me another chance? No. And with that, the past was gone for good. A year after leaving, I'd built a new life. My career thrived under Tom's company. My days were filled with work I loved, surrounded by people who valued me. I had real friends, a real future, and no regrets. One evening, Tom and I sat on the office rooftop, beers in hand, watching the sun sink below the skyline. Ever think about them? He asked, casual. I took a slow sip, considering. Did I think of Emily, Sophie, Richard? Sure, but not with pain. I'd spent 30 years trying to be a good husband, a good father. They'd thrown it away. Now they were living with the consequences, and I was happier than I'd ever been. I turned to Tom, smirking. Not anymore. I raised my glass to new beginnings, to a life free of betrayal, to the man I'd become.
Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts, like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more.